Namaste, hello everyone. Welcome to the NPTEL course Role of Craft and Technology in Interior Architecture. Today we are going to discuss module 14th, which is an extension to the module 13th, and it focuses on building crafts and the role of craft and technology in creating and enhancing interior architecture. So we are going to talk about building crafts, craft and technology and its role in creating, enhancing interior architecture, and we will discuss some examples from Uttarakhand, Rajasthan and Gujarat. And we already saw elaborate examples from Uttarakhand in the previous module, but we will have some more in this one, and then we will see the references towards the end. So just to briefly sum up, when we were talking about building crafts and we were trying to understand what are the space making elements and space making crafts, so we just came up with this consolidated diagram and which explains us all the details. So we tried to understand what are the space making elements and then what are the space making crafts. So we understood that the elements which create space, we just categorize them as these space making elements. I am very briefly telling this because we already discussed it few times, and the crafts related to the building and space making, that we put as space making crafts. Now these elements that we were talking about could be architectural, they could be interior elements, or they could be ornamental. We discussed that as well. And we could also define the crafts, the building crafts, through materials, wood craft, stone crafts, glass craft and so on. So we had this discussion. We also tried to understand the varied attributes of craft. So we tried to understand craft as space making, as surface finishes, as structure, craft as ornamentation, and craft as objects, or the craft for utilitarian purposes. So we saw that. And then we could also understand certain categories or classification of crafts, and relying heavily on the framework that is suggested by the ICRC. So we could understand craft as space making craft, the SMC, and the surface or non-structural craft, the SNC, and then we also put craft as an artifact or an object. Within the space making craft here, we could see the structure based, structure integrated, structure clad, structure finish, and a combination of all of these, permutation and combination. And the surface or non-structural one, again we further subcategorize that as surface integrated, surface clad, surface finish, and again combination of either or all of these. So taking this discussion forward, we saw a lot of visual inventories from Uttarakhand in the last module, where we were trying to understand, and apply these classifications of craft on the case studies. So we could see several examples and we could identify what are the structural crafts, what are the non-structural crafts, and where are the crafts seen as objects of daily use, and we just as per the framework suggested already, which is in reference, we tried to analyze the case studies which were taken up in Uttarakhand. Now here we see this consolidated plate which tries to put all together in one frame the different kinds of crafts that we had identified and classified last time. So here space making crafts in the residences of Uttarakhand, and I am talking about the wooden residences here, and we could see all of these identified categories, and then we have just put them here in the case studies that have been analyzed. So here we see this granary in village Purola, and here we see this structure based craft, and here the carving that we see over here the example of surface integrated craft we could see. Going further ahead, here in the door jambs, again this is the wood carving, the timber door, and we can see the structure integrated, as well as here we see the apron art, so we see the surface finish also. Then further ahead here in the corbelling, we see the structure integrated, this is from village Genchwan in Uttarakhand again. Here we see the structure clad craft here in the case of the flooring, and we also see the objects of use when we talk about this furniture. Here further, in the frame there is again wood carving, and this is on the door. So we see another classification of craft here. Here we see the surface finish, apron art, and this is on wall. And this is again in Almora, Uttarakhand. Further ahead we see example of surface cladding here. So surface clad crafts. This is the cladding of ringal that we see over here on the wall. And then we see again objects of use. So we see here these ringal baskets which are used for the daily purposes, and we also see a locally made woolen blanket over here. So this is a sort of a visual inventory, and exercises like these could really help understand different kinds of crafts, what are their attributes, and how could one classify them, understand them, how do they contribute in creating or enhancing interior architecture. Also, the visual inventory, it is more like an infographic, and it helps understand things in a better way, not just going by pages of text. Plus it is also a repository, and this is going to create a sort of a research base, and as and when one understands the regional variations, further details, all the data could just keep on adding to the repository that is created. So I request all of you to take this forward and contribute in this repository, and whatever data that you generate or further work upon, it could be shared, and it could be really built upon in the form of a data collection. Now taking this discussion forward, we will see some examples from the craft of Rajasthan, and I am just specifically talking about one project in Udaipur, and it's very significant when we talk about building crafts, generating livelihood for the craft persons and letting them work on their own, utilizing their wisdom and skills, and not necessarily providing them with working drawings or just telling them what to do on site. So this is Heritage Hotel Uday Vilas in Udaipur, and again one of my favorite architects. It has been designed and created by Abhikram Architects, and they involve a lot of craft persons. So it recognizes ingenious craft persons and values their skills, knowledge and material sensibilities that have contributed in creation of piquant and quality spaces. So there is not just an idea of proportion and scale and aesthetic, but also material sensibilities, the knowledge about how to make or how to create that experience within space. So right from the entrance to all the different spaces that one would navigate through in this project, there is so much to learn about building crafts, craft and technology, and how they are interrelated with interior architecture. So this contemporary architectural marvel, it proudly flaunts Mewari architectural elements, traditional lime plaster that requires up to 18 months of preparation and is known to last centuries without any maintenance. It has domes with floral paintings on gold leaves, applied decoration like mirror inlay and mosaics, deco style furniture and other period pieces, vivid accent colors in the interior spaces that resonate with the textiles of Rajasthan, all impeccably crafted by several craftspersons who worked hand in hand with interior architects and designers. So this is a sort of an ecosystem that I keep talking about, where there are different stakeholders from the construction industry and craft persons also forming an important part of this value chain and contributing through their skills of making and knowledge of materials. So we see so many examples here. See, traditional lime plaster is used over there. There is a mention of space making elements which have a distinct identity. We talk about this painstaking process where the lime plaster takes so many months for preparation, but of course it is known for its maintenance and quality and longevity. Then we are also talking about some surface finishes, the floral paintings, and we are talking about surfaces. So there is a golden surface. We are talking about another craft which is the mirror inlay. We are talking about mosaics, There is a deco style furniture over there, so again furniture elements. And then we are talking about color theory as well. So there are vivid accent colors in the interior spaces, and they resonate with the textiles of Rajasthan. So again there is a connect between the way of life, the fabric one wears, the nice color it embraces, and how it also enhances the space making. And they are all impeccably crafted by several craftspersons who also work hand in hand with designers, and it's not just working single handedly. So it's an ecosystem again. So these are some pictures, and throughout this lecture we will be just browsing through a lot of visual inventories, and we will be just seeing and observing. So here again we see this elaborate stone craft, we see different elements, we see jharokas, we see these chhatris over here, we see the arches, and we see the structural crafts over here. We also see the surface integrated craft over here, and even here in this swimming pool we see this beautifully chiseled out marble design. So all of this is again stone craft contributing to creating an experience for the user and creating space which is so piquant. Some more views here, even in the flooring we see here, we see the mirror inlay. Here we see the rich fabric, we see lot of furniture elements over here, even the carpets over here. So all of these small little elements, the lighting, the kind of door frame, and the entire setting that we see over here, all of these small details, they contribute to the cohesive space making and how to create a quality within that which is enjoyable, also aesthetic. Again a view from the interiors, the kind of elements, the inlay work on the floors, and here we will see in another picture, the elaborate one, we see some painting on the gold leaves, so the kind of surface finishes that have been created. Also again the entire scheme, the vivid accent colors, the use of colors, and how it has this warmth and the kind of lighting that also accentuates them. This is what I was talking about. So we have these gold leaves, and maybe it's not clear in this picture, but there are some details over here. Let's see if we have another picture. So yeah, probably some details over here. So some floral paintings on the gold leaves, and we see this on the surface of the dome which is centrally located. And here again the kind of space frames which are created, the architectural elements, the furniture, the entire setting with the flooring and all the kinds of fabrics that have been used. Again here we see the surface finish, we see all these nice colors, we see some surface finishes here as well, the distinct furniture style, and again the entire setting, how it is done, where is a thing placed and what is the total ambience which is created. Again I think we have already seen this, we were discussing the gold leaves and the paintings on that. Another view again which talks about this volume that is created in the space, and how when one approaches, what is the kind of cone of vision and what all could be seen if the subject is somewhere here, and the entire plethora of details that it opens a user to, which catches his or her attention and creates that indulgence in the space. Again here this lovely detail we see, and this is the same dome with the gold leaf, and this is right now very dimly lit, and this chandelier is quite prominent in this picture. So all kinds of elements that could contribute to space making and create a sort of an experience for the user, they really need to be understood by a designer, and there has to be an eye for detail, and these small details, they really create a big impact, like what we see in this project. Now I would like to also briefly discuss one research which was done at the SID research cell, CEPT University. I was the part of the research team there, and now it's converted into the book called Stone Buildings of Gujarat. I have put that in the references, and here maybe some pictures and plates are slightly blurred because they have been taken, scanned, but of course one could refer to that book. It's very informative, and it's a very easily comprehensible book because there are a lot of visuals and very nicely explained drawings in that. So what this book or the research talks about is defining and describing elements of a built form, which have been further categorized as these three. So structural elements, building elements, and interior elements. For structure elements, discussion on foundation, plinth, wall, arch, buttress, dasa, column, beam, bracket, roof, ceiling, whatever are structural parts. Building elements, step, staircase, parapet, railing, chhajja, jharoka, screen, chhatri, spout, minaret or a pillar. And interior elements, specifically the furniture, the threshold, the finishes that we have been talking about, and of course the decorative elements. So I'll be just now browsing through and showing some visual information, visual inventories that describe all of these. So here what we can see is the foundation, plinth and dasa. So here, like if we go to the previous slide, we saw the mention here, and we are talking about the structural elements. So here we see the details, and starting from the foundation level, to the plinth, and then coming further ahead for dasa, they are very important structural elements of a building, for making a building, and they are sort of also elements which could highlight the building crafts, the kind of detail that goes on them, if there is carving on them. So like here this bend is like highlighted and it stands out, besides the structural purpose of course which it is solving. We see some more plates about foundation and plinth, and this book, it gives an elaborate explanation. There is an introduction to the element that has been chosen, and then there are different pictures and examples, like this is from Dholka, the few examples which we are going to see in the subsequent modules, and there are drawings which explain the elements and the making of it, how it is done, the section over here. So all these details are there. It's very difficult to cover in one module, but of course we are just visually trying to understand the elements, and there is this book that can be referred to. So also going ahead, there is a discussion on types and varieties. So if we are talking about the foundation and plinth, there are different types within that, and then there are also construction details. So there is an elaborate discussion on these elements, and one could understand easily this classification. Also how building craft is integrated within each of these elements, and in totality how the attribute of space making is assigned to these building crafts by the virtue of creating the space, and how the making is involved in them. So here we see different kinds of types, different drawings over here, and construction details. So how a foundation or a plinth is constructed, these kinds of details that we see over here. Then dasa, again going by all these discussions that we just saw, there is an elaborate explanation, what it is, where all it is used, the examples, and there is also some integration of water spouts over here, so some examples with that, and of course the entire construction details. What are the construction details? What goes in the making? What is the step-by-step procedure? These examples are specifically in stone, and I find them very relevant talking about the building crafts, trying to understand the different kinds of space making elements, also the kinds of different space making craft, the structure, integrated, structural, non-structural, surface finish. So that's why I've just put them over here, and I'm sure even just by looking at these inventories, it is going to give us some idea about what the course is about, and Of course, we have more discussions in the further modules, and we saw it in the previous ones as well. So continuing further, walls, columns, beams and brackets. Again, different kinds of examples, different kinds of pictures and case studies. And we see here different types and varieties. Here, the corner detail. There are construction details, what kind of joinery, what is the placement like and how they are constructed. Talking about the columns, beams and brackets. Again, the variety, the striated construction and how the column and beam is joined. What is the detail? Here, this elaborate bracket that we see. Again, so this bracket over here, the column over here and the beam over here. So construction details. It has a lot of ornamentation as well. So again, we are seeing it as a building craft which is solving the structural purpose as well as it's very ornamental, so it adds to the aesthetic of it. So lot of drawings and explanation how the structure comes together. So they are very interesting and informative plates that we are seeing here. Again, continuing with columns, beams and brackets, we see the different kinds. That's itself a repository. Different kinds of columns, their capitals are different, shafts are different, the form is different. Here if we see the form vis-a-vis this one, we see so many different kinds of columns over here. Here. So again, a sort of a visual repository. More. So here we see this twin column. Here this column shaft is very simple, but the capital is quite ornate. So we see all these kinds of examples. We see the brackets over here. So all of these we have just tried to put as part of this research as different elements, space making elements, and what kind of stone craft goes with them, And now arches, we have seen arches in so many buildings, specifically the historical monuments, and we see different kinds of arches and openings over here. This one. So describing the arches, the elaborate introduction, different types of arches. This one is different, this is different, of course this one is different. Here what we see, there are different kinds of arches, their methods of making are different. In how many parts is one arch made? Are they 2 parts, 3 parts? How many centers does it have? 2 centers, 1 center, more. And what kind of volume are they creating? What is the kind of proportion system that is being followed, and how stonecraft as a medium has been able to carry forward that construction and the meanings behind it. So that's all the intention of this course and this lecture, to trying to understand space making through the medium of building, through the medium of this building material and the craft associated with it. Again, since we are talking about the types and variety, so many types over here. We see so many details of the keystone. All the arches are different. Their centers are different, their forms are different, the volume embraced by them are different, the aesthetic that comes after the making is different, the different kinds of beautiful arches we see here. Then the varied roof forms again. These have been documented as part of this research. So there is a dome, there is a shikhar, there is a flat roof, there could be more kinds of roof forms that could be documented. So here we see these different kinds, we see this shikhara, we see the dome over here, and again different kinds of drawings that help us understand this space making element. Then the construction details, how are they made, and when we look from inside, standing within the built space, and the kind of details that we see on the ceiling here, they are also very interesting and very elaborately done. This is done in stone and mostly by hands in case of the traditional historical monuments. Then steps and staircase are another examples, another elements, and we see them over here. This is in the mosque, the step well over here, the staircase. So all of them assigning a different purpose to the space. Different types. What are the different varieties that one come across? Again, different elements, trying to understand them in different contexts for different functions, for different kinds of projects. Construction details, how they have been made. So it is a very informative and elaborate book, and I highly recommend everybody to go through it. Openings and jharokas are another elements, and we see here different kinds of examples, openings. So, and within that there has been a classification in terms of monumental entrances that we see here. There are arched entrances like this one. There are domestic entrances, because of course the typology is different, the scale is different. So, the domestic entrances over here. And then there are different types and varieties that have been documented. So, all the building elements, space making elements. Jharoka, again we see so many different kinds of jharokas. I mean, this is such a rich repository. Visually itself it gives so much information, and we see the different types over here which have been documented. So many varieties. And they also reflect upon the different kinds of influences that might exist at that time. Craft persons coming from different places and then adding to their knowledge. So distinct style which is from that region. Other than that, what are the deviations or different kinds of new styles that have been added upon. So that kind of information is also generated through repositories like that. So again, continuing the previous one, some more types and varieties. Of course, the construction details which have been very elaborately given over here. We see some chhatris. Again the details, different types over here we see. Talking about the screens, I have always been very fascinated by the jalis, and here we see all these different kinds of jalis, this play of light and shadow and the different kinds of motifs and different kinds of modules that we see over here. So these are all stone jalis, and again different types and varieties that we see over here. Some more types and varieties. Some have some geometrical motifs, some have floral motifs. This is the very famous Siddhi Sayyed Jali. We will see this example when we talk about more case studies from Gujarat, and it's very beautiful and very renowned design. Ceiling panels, decorative elements and finishes. This elaborate ceiling, ornamentation, here again the details that we see. So again the drawings that explain how many parts to it, what is the fractal geometry followed, what are the different types and varieties, this kind of documentation. Then also talking about thresholds and more decorative elements here. They have a lot of significance and meanings. The different motives here, they have different stories, and they also reflect on the ethos of the society. Why this particular threshold, what is the story behind it, and of course there is such elaborate craft that we see here in the making of it. Then also finishes, what kind of stone, which kind of finish. This we are going to see in one of the modules. And there are some contemporary examples also, because we were seeing only the historical ones, the traditional buildings. So there are few residences that have been documented as part of this research, and now this is a contemporary residence and we see arches over here. So the context is different, the expression is different, but still the stone craft, the element and the making, they have a lot of wisdom and skills involved in it. Then we are talking about the columns here, openings, the furniture we see over here, which is so much a part of the landscape and the entire vocabulary that we see here in the architecture. It has some cohesiveness just by the virtue of the kinds of elements that have been chosen and the way they have been treated and designed. Walls, arches, and again different kinds of columns, some more openings that we see here. Some more. Here we see these steps, different kinds of steps, this one and this one. Some more pictures again from a contemporary residence, and now this is furniture, some more contemporary furniture, stone furniture. So, furniture elements. So, these are some marvelous examples, of building craft and timeless architecture. We are going to discuss the summary of all these last 4 modules that we covered, and let us have a look at the references. So, please see this book, it is highly recommended, and of course, there are more references on the building crafts. So, space making, surface finishes, then here we have seen this reference a few times, some more references, some more consolidated references for you. We are stone craft, we have been talking a lot about it, so we see that. More. Thank you.